Jesse, we are here.
Yeah, we are.
It is Cup of Joe. Cup of Joe in the afternoon with
Yeah.
Joey and Jesse.
Yep.
It is so good to be here. It has been a crazy day so far already,
Yeah.
Jesse, hasn't it?
Sure has.
Yeah, yeah. It's it's been good,
Mm-hmm.
but we've just got a lot going on. Jesse just got back from another weekend vacation.
Yeah.
And we I was at a funeral today,
Mm-hmm.
and for many of you, a lot of you know Betty Bergeron, and was at the funeral for Betty Bergeron today, and got to officiate that. And Jesse, I'll let you talk about your part here in a second,
Okay.
but I want to kind of talk about with Betty. I talked in the sermon yesterday about how a lot of times we get to sit in on funerals. And when we sit in on a funeral or sit in on a meeting where we meet the family and get to know the people, you learn a lot about them.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And I learned a whole lot more about Betty than I knew.
Yeah. Yeah.
The side I knew of Betty was a woman who was loving, who was always joyful,
Mm-hmm.
always excited, never had a complaint, just kind of just upbeat. And you sit there and go, well, I could see her being having a little bit of an adventurous side.
Yeah. Yeah.
Never did I realize the adventurous side that Betty had.
Yeah.
And even talking to other people in the church today and yesterday after reading the obituary, people went, I didn't know Betty rode motorcycles. She didn't just ride
Yeah.
motorcycles, she raced motorcycles.
Yeah. Yeah.
And stuff like, oh, I didn't know she was into mushroom hunting. She was big into camping and fishing.
Mm-hmm.
She traveled from Alaska all the way to Hawaii, like
Mm-hmm.
all over the place. And she was she was a fireball.
Yeah. Wasn't she also a security guard or something along those lines?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for her community.
Yeah. She retired to Florida on the winters. So she
Mm-hmm.
was a snowbird.
Yeah.
Now, here's the deal. When you become a snowbird, a lot of times you go down there to just hang out and just do you.
Mm-hmm.
She was and I love the way it was phrased. She was a volunteer mobile security guard.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
she was like moving, like she didn't want to just sit in a booth.
Yeah. Yeah.
She wanted to go around, and
She's
she
going
did
around.
it for her community.
Yeah.
That's what it was put out, was for her community. She cared about people.
That's cool.
And she wanted to do it to help people and be there for people. So that was an awesome thing
Yeah,
for
that's
me to
cool.
get to know that type of stuff, get to know all the different things she did,
Mm-hmm.
how much she loved people. And do you realize she loved swimming?
Oh yeah.
But loved swimming to the point of she put out there, she would keep track during the summer how many times she went swimming in her own
Really?
pool.
Wow.
Betty was
That's
89
awesome.
this year.
Wow. That's
Betty
incredible.
swam 27 times this summer.
And that's impressive.
Yeah.
That is impressive.
And to me, the other cool part was how attached to, not attached, but how connected to her family she was.
Mm-hmm.
And talking to her family, they're all in church. They're all still following God,
Mm-hmm.
which is an encouragement and a testimony of Betty. But then to hear them say, yeah, we heard about your revival. Mom called us every day of the revival. And I talked to sister or to daughters, to granddaughters, to granddaughters-in-law,
Mm-hmm.
and grandkids, great grandkids, and all of them were, yeah, we all heard about the revival.
Oh wow.
Every day she called each and every one of us.
Yeah. What a great witness.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow.
That's awesome.
But too, to be that connected with your family.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to love your family enough to say, hey, this is something I'm passionate about. I want to tell
Mm-hmm.
you about this. It was really cool to me.
Yeah.
And it
That is
kind
cool.
of, for me, was like, I need to be more connected with my family too.
Mm-hmm.
I need to make sure that I'm doing the same thing and not just talking with them to talk with them,
Right.
but what's going on? What am I excited about? What's God doing?
Mm-hmm.
What's God doing in their lives? I want to hear that too.
Yeah.
But God did something in your life. You kind of got to have reunion
Yeah.
this weekend. Jesse,
Yeah.
I know you went away to celebrate your mom's birthday,
Mm-hmm.
but you got to do something cool
Yeah.
also. What'd you do?
Yeah. We got to go to church at Western Hills Church of Christ over in Cincinnati. That was the first church that Brittany and I placed our membership at when we were first married, and we hadn't seen the people there for probably at least 6 years. About, well, I'm not exactly sure.
Okay.
And it was really cool to get to see them. The minister and youth minister both have been there for over 30 years now. I don't know exactly how many years, but it's been a long, long time. And so it was really cool. Their communion, they have their COVID protocols, and they used to do communion in the four corners of the room. Now with COVID, they have the prepackaged communion, and just like when we take communion for us here at the church, you have to pick up your communion as you walk in, and the communion cups are the traveling communion cups, but they're not
Yeah.
the ones like what we have. They look like little goblets. They're only about like that big, and the one side has the cracker, and the other side has the juice, and there's a separation in there. And tell you what, the cracker tasted like a cracker. It was great.
Really?
Yeah, it was good. And no, it was really good to see everyone there, and it was kind of funny that they all thought we were still in Columbus. So we've been there about 5.5 years now, but you know, it's all
Well,
good.
and didn't you say too that the senior minister that he had to get a picture with you?
That was the youth minister.
Or youth minister, yeah.
Youth minister, yeah, yeah, he did. He wanted to make sure because I mean, obviously, there's been a bunch of people. We actually had a small group down there when we were when we were attending there, and I think every single person from the small group has left the church, but obviously not on bad terms. Like one went to go be a children's minister somewhere. One's a missionary over in Kosova. One's a youth minister down in Florida.
Okay.
One's a worship minister. So
Yeah.
we all just it was just one of those. It was naturally going to happen, right? And so I guess what Ron does is he makes sure if someone's visiting that it's been a while for him. He wants to take a picture and just remember that memory. So
That's really cool.
it was cool.
That's one of the cool things of getting back together. And I know for a lot of people at our church right now, they're enjoying the videos of the past ministers and youth ministers that they're sending in and getting to see them and connect with them. It may not be in person right now, but they're at least getting to hear some of the stories and see their face.
Yeah,
and
that's cool.
It's really cool to be reunited.
Yeah.
And actually talking about reuniting, we are going to be talking today about the Tower of Babel.
Yeah.
I will say this: yesterday, we got to talk about Abraham and the call of Abraham, and we looked into that, and we looked at how God leads, and God is the great leader, and how He wants us to just follow Him, and how that is what we're supposed to do. We're leave behind everything else and follow God. And I know that's something the elementary kids talked about. I talked with my daughter afterwards. I said, so what'd you learn about? And what did Scott teach you? And she said, Scott was crazy. I was like, oh, I bet. But she said, no, it was fun. We enjoyed class. But she said, we learned about Abraham. Well, actually, what she said, some A guy, something. And we said, Abraham? Yeah. Did you learn about Abraham? Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Did you learn about him getting called to leave his home and go somewhere new? Yeah. He did it. Yeah.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. And Jolie, though, her being my daughter, she goes, is that kind of what we did? Yeah. Yeah, it is. That's kind of what we did.
Yeah.
But that's what they talked about, and about being obedient and following God. And one of the things that we talk about often at our church and you read the Bible, especially in the New Testament, one of the things we're called to is to be united. And we're called to still keep those connections. And even if you're in a different part of the world, how often in the letters in the New Testament of reconnecting with people that are in different parts of the country.
Yeah.
That's what we're called to do.
Right.
That was awesome. You got to do that this weekend.
It was really cool.
But what happens when unity goes wrong or goes bad? Or can unity go bad?
I think so, yeah.
Is there a bad... Yeah, I sit there because I've heard someone... I said that once before. I said, "What is unity a bad thing?" And I had a student say, "No, unity's good. The Bible says be united. Unity is what we need." And I said, "Okay, but what about a gang that's united and going and killing somebody?"
Yeah. That's not a good thing.
No, it's not. What happens when unity goes wrong? And how do you make sure that if you're united, even as a church, that your unity is a good thing? What's the difference between good unity and bad unity?
I think it depends on where your focus is at.
Yeah. And I think what's the one story when you think of in the Bible, Jesse, of bad unity?
That would be the Tower of Babel. What we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah. We're going to talk about Tower of Babel. And for me, with Cup of Joe over the next couple months, there are going to be some times that it'll tie directly into the sermon. And there will be some times that, hey, we read this in our Bible reading plan. I really like this story. I want to talk about it, and I can't preach about it.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about it.
Yeah.
And Tower of Babel is one of those stories that last week we read, actually 2 weeks ago. No, last week. Last week we read. This week we're going to be reading further on. But Genesis 11, it starts off with the Tower of Babel. And so we're going to dive into the Tower of Babel. And a lot of you know what the Tower of Babel is. Actually, fun little fact. You ready, Jesse? The Tower of Babel is never mentioned in the Bible.
Yeah, actually, I was reading that. yeah, I was reading that today.
The thing about the Tower of Babel is it's never given that name. We've given it that name. And if you look at the caption, it says Tower of Babel, but it never actually says that in the Bible.
Right.
So I like to reference it instead of the Tower of Babel, the time the world united against God.
Yeah.
And why do I say that? Why is it viewed as the time the world united against God? Jesse, give me what you would tell a toddler about the Tower of Babel. How would you describe the story of the Tower of Babel to a toddler?
People wanted to build a big tower because they thought they could they could go to God, and God said no, and he confused the language.
Okay.
And everyone scattered.
All right. Basic story.
There you go.
That's the one everybody knows. Everybody knows that part of that. Let's dive a little deeper and see what this is actually talking about when you go into it. Start in verse 1 and 2. Now the whole world had one language and a common speech. This is after Noah's Ark. So everyone had one language, common speech. As people moved eastward, they found a plain in Shinar and settled there. They all were going together. How good does that sound? Everyone united together, moving together, talking together, same language. Everybody understands everyone.
Sounds good so far.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah, except for the fact that if you go back to chapter 10, when God's giving Noah the commands and what they're supposed to do, and he's giving the promise, and he says, or maybe it's chapter 9, I don't know.
Yeah, chapter 9.
Chapter 9. And God tells Noah, so now that I've saved the world through you on your ark, go ahead and scatter throughout all the land and inhabit it, multiply, and he's going to keep his covenant.
Yeah. But scatter.
Scatter. That was the key word.
That's the key word there. Scatter among the land. What you'll notice oftentimes when people get into trouble and end up sinning, they start with a small little sin of, well, we're going to listen to mostly what God says.
Yeah.
But we're going to not pay attention to this one piece.
Yeah.
I'm going to follow most of what I read in the Bible. But let's act like we never heard that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what happens here. They all go together and they all settle together. And then in verse 3, they said to each other, "Come, let's make bricks, bake them thoroughly." They used brick instead of stone and tar for mortar. So, what did God make?
The earth.
The earth, but he made rocks.
Well, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So out of that, God made rocks. Instead of using stuff to build, they said, what God made isn't good enough.
Yeah.
We're going to make our own. We're going to take it a step further. We're going to do our own thing. So what you'll notice is, and this pun, the building blocks of sin.
Mm-hmm.
You see
Yeah.
their unitedness starts off with ignoring one little piece of what God said,
Mhm.
one little part of the command. The rest of it, yeah, we'll make babies. Sure,
Mhm.
we'll do that
Yeah.
part.
Yeah.
Yeah. Scatter,
Yeah.
we'll get there.
Yeah.
But what's they go? Eh, yeah, God made rocks, but we can do it better.
Mhm.
Let's make bricks.
Mhm.
Let's make mortar.
Yeah.
So they start to go that direction. So you see that little by little. And then it comes to verse 4. They said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may make a name for ourselves. Otherwise, we will be scattered over the face of the whole earth."
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Now they've done it.
Yeah.
Now it's full force turn our back on God.
Well, yeah, because I mean, they even said scattered. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, they're like, we know what God said, but we're gonna do something.
Yeah. We're not going to follow God's will here.
Mhm.
You know what? We want to, and because they say that, we know God, like it's no longer, let's ignore that.
Mhm.
We know God wants us to do this. We're deliberately saying no.
Yeah.
And not just saying no. It said we want to make a name for ourselves.
Yeah.
We want to do this for us.
Mhm.
And we got to talking about it, and Jesse did a little bit of research.
Mhm.
And what did you find out about, like, kind of how tall it would have been, and what's some background to
Yeah.
the Tower of Babel that's
Yeah.
never been called the Tower of Babel?
Right. So just real quick, I wanted to share the world's tallest buildings on each continent. Well, we won't go through each one, but the bottom one, as you might figure, is Antarctica, with a 15-meter building. They hold a balloon there, a weather balloon there. So it's kind of cool, actually.
I'm glad you clarified weather balloon.
Yeah.
I really was
Yeah.
hoping it's just one like
Right.
party balloon
Yeah.
that they just want to keep up there in
Yeah.
Antarctica.
No, it's a weather balloon. And then in North America, our tallest building is the One World Trade Center, and that comes in at a whopping 541.3 meters or 1,776 feet tall.
Oh wow.
So I mean that's a tall building. The tallest one is in Asia. It's in the United Arab Emirate. I don't,
Emirates.
Emirates. Thank you. And it's the Khalifa, and it's 2,717 feet. So it's literally 1,000 feet taller than the tallest building in North America. So that's a tall building.
Okay.
All right. So they don't. No one actually knows how tall it was, but there's one book called the Book of Jubilees, and it has a very, very, very descriptive account of the Tower of Babel. And what it said is that the tower's height was 5,433 cubits, which is 2,484 meters, which in feet, because we live in America, is 8,150 feet. So it's 3 times as tall as the tallest building in Asia, and that means it was roughly 1.6 miles high. If that's goes to what the account of the Book of Jubilees say. That is ridiculously tall.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh yeah.
Well, I can't even imagine a building that tall.
And you had researched too the way they would have built it, the way it's viewed. It would have been staggered.
Right. Yeah. And so that was the other thing. There was a professor who wrote a book, and he was talking about the Tower of Babel, and he said that the bricks that they would have used would have had a crushing strength of 6,000 pounds per square inch. Basically, like what force it would take for that brick to crush. So 6,000 per square inch. That's a pretty tough brick there. They said that if you were to build it straight up and down, that it could have been 1.3 miles tall. But if they would have made it to where it would have been, how did he say it? If they would have built it,
was it staggered?
Staggered, yeah. Taper. That's it. Taper. Yeah. If they would have built it that way, then they basically could have built it as tall as they wanted to. In fact, so tall that they would have run out of oxygen before they could actually build it that high.
Okay. It's an interesting part of that, and that's where I wanted to get to because they build this tower so tall,
Yeah.
and they don't finish building it.
Right.
They could keep going,
Mm-hmm.
and they want to make it as tall as possible. And the whole reason they're doing this is why? To make a name for
Themselves.
ourselves
And to not scatter.
and to not scatter. Yeah, they wanted to do it for themselves, and they were trying to reach to the heavens,
Mm-hmm.
which sounds great. Now, who's in the heavens?
God.
So they're trying to get to who?
God.
They're trying to be on the same level as God.
Yeah.
If we can build something as tall as God is, we're just as good as God.
Mm-hmm.
Then make a name for ourselves. Because nowadays, when you hear "make a name for yourself," it's go and do something to make money. Go and do something which probably still is making it all about you.
Yeah. Right.
But there, it's not just make it all about me. It's we want to make our name just as great, if not greater than God.
Mm-hmm.
We want to be just as good or better than God. Ooh, that's dangerous.
That is very dangerous.
And as I think about it, though, how often does that happen today where people unite and they're united about let's make us great?
Mm-hmm.
What can we do? Let's all be united so that we can be the best in the world. And I hear this, if we unite the whole world, there's nothing or nobody who can stand in our way.
Mm-hmm.
Who are they talking about?
Themselves.
Well, yeah, but who are they talking about stand in our way?
Well, God, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's not even God could stop us if we can. And that's kind of this idea that you hear a lot of unity in the world is united so that we can do what we want.
Mm-hmm.
United to make us great. Why is that bad?
Well, because pride comes before the fall.
Yes. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's a big one. Pride comes before the fall. But the other thing, too, is, and we talked about God being the great leader because God knows everything.
Mm-hmm.
He knows what's best for us.
Mm-hmm.
If we put ourselves as high as God, we are not as wise as God is.
Yeah.
We run into a lot of big issues.
Mm-hmm.
And what they didn't realize is if they were to reach the heavens, they would have suffocated.
Mm-hmm.
They would have died because they couldn't breathe at that height.
Yeah.
And here's the deal. This is what God does to prevent that from happening, which to them would have been viewed as a big punishment.
Mm-hmm.
But think about it. God just saved all of their lives.
Yeah.
Because what happens? One person goes up and never comes back down. And everyone goes, "Oh, where did they go? Let me go up."
Yeah.
Oh, he dies. Where did they go?
Yeah.
Nobody knows what's happening to them up there.
Right.
Well, they're all dying because they can't breathe.
Yeah.
And what I really hope is they would get to a point, because you can get so high that you start to float off. They were just
floating in, yeah,
floating off into space. But it says in verse 5, "But the Lord came down to see the city and the tower the people were building. The Lord said, if as one people speaking the same language they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and confuse their language so they will understand each other." I've heard people read this and they say, "Oh, God sounds mean. God doesn't want them to be as great as him." What do we know happens when people think that they can become like God?
Bad things.
Yeah.
Bad
Adam
things.
and Eve.
Yeah.
They then realized they were sinners. They realized their sin.
Mm-hmm. And all of humanity was cursed.
Yes. Like,
that's pretty bad.
Yeah. Just because they could accomplish what God's saying is they could accomplish anything, but accomplishing it means they could hurt themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Just because you can do something, like personally, I could ride a motorcycle and jump over 5 buses.
Mm-hmm.
I could.
You could.
I wouldn't live.
Yeah, I don't think that's a good idea.
Just because anything would be impossible for me doesn't mean that I should do all of it.
Mm-hmm.
And God knows this is not smart for them to do. So to save their lives, and the other thing too is they can do anything they want to do, and they're going to continue to sin because they think they can do it on their own.
Yeah.
They're not going to rely on me.
Mm-hmm.
And what do we know about not relying on God?
well, you shouldn't do that.
Yeah, and it makes other things impossible.
Yeah.
So they won't be able to. They can't. They may be able to do the impossible, but they can't save themselves.
Right.
Only God can do that.
Mm-hmm.
So God says, "I'm going to help them. I'm going to mix up their languages, so they will not understand each other."
Mm-hmm.
And then they're all mixed up, and they go out. And the Lord, it says in verse 8, the Lord scattered them from there over all the earth. They stopped building the city. That is why it was called, I take it back, Babel.
Well, the city was called.
Yeah, the city was called, but not the tower.
Not the tower.
And some would say that's actually Babylon.
Yeah, it is Babylon. Yeah.
Because there the Lord confused the language of the whole world. From there the Lord scattered them over the face of the whole earth.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, traditionally that's Babylon.
Yeah. So you have this happen. God does this to save them.
Mm-hmm.
Because he cares about them. And then what do? Once their languages are all scattered and mixed up,
then they have to scatter.
They have to scatter. They go their own ways.
Mm-hmm.
What have you noticed in our culture today? What has been the number one focus, probably since 1950s? What does everyone try to do? We try to invent things to bring all of humanity together.
Yeah.
Let's all have one common language. Let's
Mm-hmm.
all learn the same language. Be able to all communicate. Let's all have the internet so that we can all be connected to each other.
Yeah.
I read one article that said the internet is like the Tower of Babel. I was like, that's a stretch.
Yeah.
But when I got thinking about it, why do we have the internet? So that we can say, look at what we made.
Mm-hmm.
Look, let's all do this together. Let's all be united. Let's all come together to show, and I've heard this before, to show that we don't need God.
Mm-hmm.
Show that we can do it on our own. And what happens when you do that?
That's a dangerous game you're playing there.
Yeah. That's why we're called to reach out to God. That's why God says, I'm here for you.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you try to do that, yeah, you may accomplish some really good stuff, but you're also going to go down a really bad path.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just because you accomplish physical things doesn't mean spiritually you're doing good. So it's a fun story, but I think one of the big keys that I take away from this is, why are you uniting? When you, even as a church, what's your purpose of meeting as a church?
To give God glory.
Exactly. If you start realizing the comments that are being made, even at our church, and I say this, if you hear this at our church, if you hear this from me or Jesse, come and confront us. If you hear us saying stuff like, hey, we as a church need to do this together so that we can be made great. Not a good thing.
No, that's dangerous for game.
Help us make the name of the church better.
Yeah.
Because we want to be the best church out there.
Nope.
No. We want to be serving God. That's what our focus is. That's what we're called to do.
Yeah.
Go and make disciples. Go and love people. Go and spread the gospel. That's what we're called to do.
Yeah.
That's what the focus of the church should be. When you hear that it's not, when a group of Christians, their focus isn't on doing that, then it start to question, wait, what are we doing? Where? Mm-hmm. And the other thing is start to look at the building blocks of the sin. Not just sin. All of it was sin, but the building blocks of turning your back completely on God.
Yeah.
If you're starting with saying, hey, no big deal.
Mm-hmm.
We can skip over this piece.
Yeah.
You're heading down a bad path.
Yep. Yeah.
Be careful.
Mm-hmm.
And then it just starts rolling.
And it snowballs.
Yes.
Yeah.
Jesse, you got anything else to add to this?
Just the one last thing I want to say, like you talked about the church doing things, and it's not a bad thing for the church to do things, but it's just what is the intention behind it? Why are we doing things?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I will say, I had one person ask me, well, why are you guys doing a game night?
Mm-hmm.
If my response was, because I like beating people at euchre, and I joke about that, but really, it's because I want to have time where we can all come together to support each other. place not just to have fun, but to encourage each other when we've had a bad week.
Mm-hmm.
To be there to support each other and to build each other up and be able to pray for each other at the game night.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just about the games, it's about being together
Right.
so that we can do the Lord's work.
Yeah. It's another really good fellowship time.
Yeah.
So
Exactly. Well, and that's what fellowship's all about.
exactly.
So that's what we're called to do. So I encourage you, if you've got questions for us, reach out to us. Go to our website at
CovingtonFCC.com.
all right, or email us at
FCC Covington
Covington.
Ministers with an S
yes.
at gmail.com. Not with just an S, not with an S.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway.
Go to our website, you'll find it.
Yeah.
You can also go to our Facebook page, First Church of Christ Covington, and you can comment here or send us a message here. But reach out to us.
Mm-hmm.
We would love, if you've got any questions, if you've got concerns, we would love to talk to you. That's what we're here for. That's why we're here. We hope you have a great week. Continue reading. We've got a Bible plan. You can go to our website.
Mm-hmm.
It's on there. If you want to read along with us, and if you want to go back and check out the sermons, you can jump on there too and check out the sermons. Thank you guys so much for being with us, and have a great day. Live in unity.